Okay, so welcome everyone to our group practice today, our reading, meditation, coming together, listening to the Dharma, wisdom from Buddhist teachings. The title of our talk, of our event today, is The Teachings of Zen and Other Such Confusions. So we can expect that as we listen to these teachings, as we make the decision to walk on the path to get more and more involved in the nature of reality, the nature of our body and mind, we aren't just going to encounter sweets and sugars and good tasting things. We're going to encounter that bitter medicine of rejection, of being thrown out, of encountering great difficulties without apparent reason. And so as these confusions come up, we need to learn to detach, but also to be grateful for those confusions as encouragements, as invitations to continue on our path. As we go through these readings today, as we go through these Zen teachings, I invite you to listen with a lot of sincerity, a lot of wholeheartedness, as much as you are able to do so. And as we read through it, as we listen to the teachings, at any point, if you are feel more curious, more confused about what is being read or what comes up, the invitation is there for you to speak out, for you to share about your understanding at this moment. And in that way, we can dive deeper into the real teachings, which is our own personal reception, our own personal understanding of what is read here today. Because, of course, some people don't speak English. So the English words in themselves are not particularly meaningful. They're not particularly real. And when we apply this to our own mind, to our own way of thinking about the world and how we relate to ourselves, it becomes very clear that we're in a confusing situation, quite an interesting situation. These words may not be more significant than the wind in the trees, but we'll have to see about that for ourselves. So I'm reading today from Zen teachings, a compilation of them in a book simply called The Zen Reader. And it's a production, it's a book put together by Thomas Cleary, I believe, from Zen teachings, Zen texts, from various historical masters, great monks, great teachers in the Buddhist tradition, specifically the Chinese Chan tradition of Buddhism, what is most commonly known as Zen. So as you listen to these teachings, please listen to them and take this event, this activity as a meditation in and of itself. So sit somewhat still, get comfortable. You can even sit in your meditation position. Focus on your breath, focus on your body, and listen from the heart. Listen from your practice, whatever that means to you. So we'll start off here with a short reading entitled Progressive Realization from Pai Chang. This is kind of an introduction to Zen understanding. And then we're going to go into a reading from a very, very famous teacher, monk, Han Shan, also known as Cold Mountain. And Cold Mountain was a poet in the 9th century in the Chinese Tang Dynasty, and a very, very prolific poet. And if you saw the image on this, the thumbnail of this YouTube video, you will see some depiction of Cold Mountain from many, many hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But we'll start with progressive realization. Okay. Each form, each particle is a Buddha. Each form, each particle is a Buddha. So what does this mean? What does it mean that each form, each particle is a Buddha? What is a Buddha? Mindful, Danny, Nikki in the YouTube chat, Toa, Caleb, Sander, Machace, Kaylee, Famo, Eddie, Cashew, Asha, Andreas, Ali. What is a Buddha? This first line here, each form, each particle is a Buddha. What is a Buddha?
May I give it a shot?
Caleb says an enlightened person. Go ahead, Morgan.
I was thinking enlightened as well, but in a different form, like has already reached its highest. I don't know the word for it. Has already reached its highest.
Okay. Caleb says an enlightened person. Famo says, I understand it as everyone has Buddha nature in them. Asha says, a state of peaceful mindfulness, the Buddha is achievable in us all. Cashew says, awake, alive. Okay. So let's give the gold star here to Cashew. Awake, alive. So a Buddha is a self-enlightened one. So someone who has ended suffering, ended attachment, ended birth and death on their own, by their own, in and of themselves, awake, alive, free, ending suffering. So we think about the historical Buddha, and he is called the Buddha because he is self-enlightened, self-awakened, realization on its own accord, finding out on its own, self-enlightened, okay? In and of itself, enlightened, awake, clearing out. So, depending on the tradition, some people will say that even if you become enlightened, you will not be a Buddha because there is only one Buddha in this lifetime. That is, there is only Shakyamuni Buddha because he was self-enlightened. And if you become enlightened, you are not a Buddha, you are like an Arahat, or maybe you are like a Bodhisattva. But you are not enlightened on your own accord. You came about it because of teachings of Buddhism, from the Buddha, things like that, okay? From various sources, you were helped along the path. But the Buddha as being this self-awakened one. Progressive realization. Each form, each particle, when we practicing meditation, right? We sitting still, and there are sensations, there are particles we are feeling moment by moment in the body. Okay, this arising and passing away of these painful particles, pleasurable particles, really just sensations. Okay, each form, each particle is a Buddha, is inherently self-awakening, inherently transcending, inherently awake, alive, free. One form is all Buddhas. All forms, all particles are all Buddhas. So you're running around looking for your Buddha nature. You're running around looking for your Buddha mind. But this here says that all forms, all particles are all Buddhas. All forms, sounds, scents, feelings, and phenomena are also like this, each filling all fields. So at each moment of your awareness, when you smelling something, when you hearing something, when you experience something, fully fully filling all fields, moment to moment, awake, alive, self-enlightening. This is the gross within the subtle. This is a good realm. So this isn't gross like poo or toilet waste, but this is gross versus subtle. Okay, so children, when they are growing up, their hand only can barely squeeze. They can barely hang on to something, right? So this is very gross. But as children developing, as our motor skills developing, the hand, the muscle, all these things becoming more and more subtle, more and more refined. Each form, each particle is a Buddha. One form is all Buddhas. All forms, all particles are all Buddhas. All forms, sounds, scents, feelings, and phenomena are also like this, each filling all fields. This is the growth within the gross within the subtle. This is a good realm. This is the cognition and perception of all those in progress. This is the exit in life and entrance in death of all those in progress, crossing over everything, existent and non-existent. So birth and death, moment by moment, arising and passing away. Your self-identity, your ego, your persona, your beliefs about yourself and your whole story, not more real, not more fixed, not more true than moment to moment arising and passing away of each form, each particle, each sensation. And those sensations in and of themselves being a Buddha. Those sensations in progress, crossing over everything, existent and non-existent, moment to moment arising and passing away. So it's a very interesting situation that we find ourselves in. This is what is spoken of by those in progress. This is the nirvana, the enlightenment of those in progress. This is the unexcelled way. This is the spell that is peer to the peerless. This is the foremost teaching, considered the most profound of all teachings. No human being can reach it, but all enlightened ones keep it in mind, like pure waves able to express the purity and pollution of all waters. Their deep flow and expansive function. All enlightened ones keep this in mind. If you can be like this all the time, no matter what you are doing, then the body of pure, clear light will be revealed to you. Each form, each particle is a Buddha. One form is all Buddhas. All forms, all particles are all Buddhas. All forms, sounds, scents, feelings, and phenomena are also like this, each filling all fields. We can try it this way as well. Each form, each particle is peace. One form is all peace. All forms, all particles are all peace. All forms, sounds, scents, feelings, and phenomena are also like this, each filling all fields. Does anyone have some commentary to share to this? Commentary or questioning?
I have one. How can non-sentient phenomena experience awakeness and peace?
What is non-sentient?
Like rocks or cells, like cells of a microscopic level.
Cells and rocks are in and of themselves at peace, are they not?
I don't know.
Good. We can say that not knowing is a most intimate state. And if all that you are able to get from this meeting, this activity, this it will be a recording, it's not a recording at this moment, is a state of not knowing, then that's ideal. It's not coming from me, not coming from you, but not knowing. So we can consider this activity, this gathering of people, of beings, and we're not alone. There are many beings here, seen and unseen, small and large, uh, bacteriums, viruses. COVID is probably here. It's a global pandemic, so there are probably antibodies of COVID that are here. If you're vaccinated, there's innumerable sentient beings that are gathered here at this moment. So if all that comes from this situation is to sit, to breathe, to be aware, to be unconvinced, to be in a state of not knowing, then it's worthwhile. So let's go into detailed instructions. If that wasn't detailed enough, certainly it's much more detailed than I'm equipped to unpack the previous writing, but it's also direct and it can support us, it can encourage us to be in this state of not knowing. So detailed instructions from Cold Mountain, Han Shan, ancient Chinese poet from the 9th century, Chinese Tang Dynasty. Mysterious character, but his work was preserved. And if you are an American like me, it's kind of odd to have a text, a voice from so long ago. You know, America's history is 100 years, less than 100 years, something around that period of time. But for China, for a Chinese language, this language is sustained and continuous going back to the 9th century. I can't do that math, but it's certainly not 100 years ago. It's far, far more. 20th century, 9th century, so over 1,000 years ago. And yet this voice, to the best of our human abilities and capacities, is coming from over 1,000 years ago, preserved in this traditional Chinese language that was deeply influenced by Chan Buddhism and Taoism and the life of 1,000+ years ago in China. And you know, the best translators that we have brought that from the Chinese to the English, and we listen to it now. So it's quite a special thing to be here right now and to be listening to this, or in my case, reading this. So detailed instructions from Cold Mountain. If we are to discuss the conditions of this great matter, we can say this matter of birth and death, okay? Although it is originally inherent in everyone, actually complete in each individual, lacking nothing at all, nevertheless, for beginningless ages, the seeds of the root of attachment, subjective ideas, and emotional thinking have become so deeply ingrained as habits that they block and cover the subtle light and thwart its real, true function. So let's play that back. If we are to discuss the conditions of this great matter here, it can be the situation of life and death, which is very real and alive for each of us, even though we don't, we're not really considering it that much. We're using the computer, we're having some tea, we're, just kind of enjoying ourselves. But at any moment, just like that, birth and death arise immediately to this body, to this mind, to our thoughts, to the things that we really like and that we hold on to our loved ones, to the entire world, just like that. Finished. A meteor, who knows? Finished, just like that. And even though we, we kind of understand that in an intellectual level that that's true, the intellect doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's a literal reality of any moment to finish, the whole world, the whole body, the whole mind, finished completely. So it's a very literal reality that we find ourselves in. So it's certainly a great matter. And so the path of a Zen practitioner or a Buddhist person is to address this great matter by ending attachment to birth and death, by attaining enlightenment, attaining peace, right? Experiencing peace. And we also have this concept of Buddha nature. So as we kind of went into before, that each particle, each person has this Buddha nature. I think someone said this here. Famo said this. Understand it as everyone has Buddha nature in them. Everyone has this peace nature in them. If we are to discuss the conditions of this great matter, although it is originally inherent in everyone, actually complete in each individual, lacking nothing at all, nevertheless, for beginningless ages, the seeds of the root of attachment, subjective ideas, and emotional thinking have become so deeply ingrained as habits that they block and cover the subtle light and thwart its real true function. Living totally within the shadows of subjective ideas of body, mind, and the world, you therefore flow in the waves of birth and death. Okay, so question, commentary on this? When Buddhas and Zen masters appear in the world, everything they say, all their various techniques, expounding Zen and the teachings, are without exception tools for breaking attachments according to the situation. Basically, there is no real doctrine to give people. So-called cultivation is just clearing away the reflections of force of habit and false thinking, according to one's own mind. Insofar as effort is applied to this, it is called cultivation. So I like to bring attention to this distinction here. It's a very Zen distinction. It's a very Zen approach to the path, but it can be applied in a general Buddhist sense, depending on the style of approach, perspective. So listen, please listen closely to this. When teachers appear in the world, Buddhist teachers, Buddhist masters appear in the world, everything they say, all their various techniques, expounding Zen and the teachings, are without exception tools for breaking attachments according to the situation, according to the case that is in front of them. Basically, there is no real doctrine to give people, nothing to hang on to, nothing to grasp. So-called cultivation is just clearing away the reflections of force of habit and false thinking according to one's own mind. So it's not to arrive at the your place of work. It's not to get a certain kind of recoupment or benefit from the investment that you made. It's not to experience this special state of mind. Cultivation is so-called cultivation is just clearing away the reflections of force of habit and false thinking according to one's own mind at this moment. Insofar as effort is applied to this, it is called cultivation. Okay, anyone have something to share about this? Have a question about this? If false thinking suddenly stops for an instant and you see through your own mind the vastness of its original perfect light, the purity of its original state, no thing in it at all, this is called awakening. There is nothing to be awakened or cultivated other than this mind. Because the substance of mind is like a mirror, the reflections of subjective thinking climbing around on objects are just dust and dirt on the true mind. That is why it is said, the forms of thoughts are dust. The feelings of consciousness are dirt. If false thoughts are melted down, the original substance itself appears. It is just like polishing a mirror. When the dirt is cleaned off, clarity appears. It is naturally like this. But we humans have accumulated eons of ingrained habits that have become hard and fast. So it's not just, the mistakes that you made today or the mistakes that you made yesterday or the horrible upbringing that you had. It's not just that. It is accumulation of eons of ingrained habits. Your parents, your parents' parents, 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 onto our amoeba ancestors. All of these karmas, these cause and effects, these habits of false thinking have been coming and coming, growing and growing. And we have some modern research into intergenerational trauma, this generational sufferings that have been this generational karma that is transferred, you know, um, even genetically.
That's used for survival, correct? In
What,
the
Eddie?
past,
Eddie, what are you saying? What are you talking
that
about?
was that was used for survival, uh, to pass it on. to the next generation. Correct?
What is used for survival?
The example what you gave a minute ago about what people learn and give by DNA to their children. I cannot give a good example. So
Well, I don't think there's so much self in it. It's very much cause and effect. It's very environmental. But in taking responsibility for the situation, there is a certain degree of self-experience, right? So it's more ingrained habits that have come about through cause and effect, not necessarily because you made the choice to establish them, or because you made the decision to hand them over, but it's more a kind of cause and effect. There's not necessarily a self or an individual that is handing one thing over to another. So if false thoughts are melted down, the original substance itself appears. It is just like polishing a mirror. When the dirt is cleaned off, clarity appears, clear seeing. It is naturally like this, but we humans have accumulated eons of ingrained habits that have become hard and fast. The roots of self-clinging, the roots of self-attachment are deep and hard to pull out. In the present life, if we have the fortune to know for ourselves what is intrinsic through the inner influence of inherent insight outwardly inspired by good friends, so that we aspire to understand and shed birth and death, to tear out the very root of immeasurable ages of birth and death all at once, how could this be a small matter? We're not ordering food at McDonald's. So in the present life, if we have the good fortune to know for ourselves what is intrinsic, what is inherent, what is true, through the inner influence of inherent insight, so not from something that was given to us but from outside, but the inner influence of inherent insight, the connection that you have to your awareness nature or to your peace nature. If you have the fortune to know for yourself what is intrinsic through the inner influence of inherent insight, outwardly inspired by good friends, causes and conditions that have helped you to inspire that, so that we aspire to understand and shed birth and death, understanding birth and death, shedding birth and death. Most people don't even think about death. It's not even real to them. So we aspire to understand and shed birth and death, to tear out the very root of immeasurable ages of birth and death all at once, all right here, right now. How could this be a small matter? It couldn't. If you are not a person of great power and capacity, who can bear it alone and plunge right in with a single sword, it is truly the most difficult thing there is. When an ancient one said that it is like opposing 10,000 people all alone, they were not fooling. Anyone have a question about that? On the whole, in this final age of the teaching, there are many practitioners, but few who succeed in genuine appreciation and application. There are many who waste power, but few who attain it. Why is this? Generally, because they have not taken a direct approach. They just use their subjective feelings to evaluate things based on previously learned opinions, intellectual interpretations, and verbal expressions. Suppressing random thoughts, they work at the gateway of shadows of a light. First, they take mysterious words and marvelous sayings of ancient people and store them in their chests, making them out to be real doctrines, taking them for their own knowledge and vision, not knowing that it is utterly useless in this context. That is precisely what is meant by the saying, reliance on others for understanding blocks the gateway of one's own awakening. Reliance on others for understanding blocks the gateway of one's own awakening. Now, if you are going to do the work, first you must set aside intellectual interpretations and just work precisely on one thought. Certain faith in the original purity of your own mind. Completely untrammeled, round and bright, it fills the universe. Originally, there is no body, mind, or world, and no false ideas or emotional thinking. This one thought, itself originally unconceived, manifests all sorts of objects, all illusory, unreal. They are only reflections appearing in the true mind. When you see through them in this way, then in the emergence and disappearance of wandering thoughts, you can see for sure at a glance where thoughts arise and where they pass away. So when we practice meditation, when we sit down, starting to focus on our breathing, being aware of the body, being aware of sensations, thoughts, being aware of the mind, if we hang on to, if we get stuck, if we get attached to certain thoughts or certain sensations, feelings that come up, either trying to have more of them or trying to get rid of them, we are stuck in birth and death. We are stuck in attachment. But if you can see that there is originally no body, mind, or world in this awareness itself. Being aware of the body, being aware of the world, being aware of the mind, you are able to see through these thoughts, this body, this world, as being some kind of fixed phenomena. So when you see that these objects, these thoughts, these sensations, these experiences that you are having are only reflections, are only phenomena appearing in your awareness, are only bubbles in the ocean, when you see through them in this way, as they are temporary, illusory, then in the emergence and disappearance of wandering thoughts or sensations, you can see for sure at a glance where thoughts arise and where they pass away. Focus your effort in this way, and no matter what wandering thought may occur, the moment you confront them, they shatter, melt, and crumble away. It's kind of like those that sleepiness in the morning, right? You wake up at a certain time, you don't have something to do, so you go back to sleep. Then you wake up and you're still tired, you're still sleepy, you don't want to get started, it's so difficult to get out of bed. But once you confront your sleepiness, and there's different ways you can do it, but once you get up, once you get started, once you confront, once you embrace, once you turn towards that experience, rather than trying to push a certain thing away and to get a certain thing, immediately, quickly, depending on your overall health, that sleepiness shatters, melts, and crumbles away. You don't need coffee to do that. So do not go along with them and don't continue them, these thoughts that you have in your meditation. Do not go along with them and don't continue them. This is what Jung Chia meant when he said, "It is essential to cut off the continuing mind." It is essential to cut off the continuing mind. Does anyone have a thought about this? To cut off the continuing mind. So that as you are practicing meditation, there's a sleepiness, there's a dreaminess, there's certain continual thoughts that come up and pass away. And it is essential that we cut off that continuing mind. We cut off that constantly, continuously self-indulgent mind. Very, very important. After all, the insubstantial drifting mind is fundamentally rootless. Under no circumstances should you make it out to be something real, lying in your chest. The moment it appears, repudiate it. Give it up. Let it go. Refuse to accept or be associated with it. What are you associating with? What are you accepting in your meditation practice? You're accepting your method, breathing and being aware, or chanting a mantra, Buddho, Buddho, Buddho. Those wandering thoughts they are rootless, just like flowing clouds. They're not stuck, they're not fixed. So the moment that thought appears, that moment the confusion, sleepiness, anxiety appears, repudiate it. Do not accept or be associated with it, just to be aware of it. Once you do not associate with it, then it vanishes. But do not try to suppress it, for you will go along with it, making it like a gourd bobbing on water. You just need to set body, mind, and the world to one side and bring up this one thought, simply and precisely, like a precious sword across the sky. Whether Buddha or devil, you cut them off equally, like cutting through tangled threads, pushing them to the side to move ahead. So-called direct, straightforward mindfulness of reality as such. Now, what is this one thought? Certain faith in the original purity of your own mind. Certain faith in your awareness itself. So you just need to set body, mind, and the world to one side and bring up this one thought, simply and precisely. Now, this can be applied, a practical way to apply this. Set body, mind, and the world to one side, to sit down, to stop, to sit down and to detach and to let go of body and mind, to practice in that way. As you do it, as you practice to put down, to let go, to detach from body, mind, and the world, bring up this one thought, simply and precisely. In this case, it can be one method, breathing and being aware, to focus your mind, to direct your mind. Like a precious sword across the sky, whether Buddha or devil, whether good or bad, whether the kind of peace that you want to experience or a hellish realm that you experience. You cut them off equally, like cutting through tangled threads, pushing them to the side to move ahead. So-called direct, straightforward mindfulness of reality as such. Straightforward mindfulness involves no thought. If you can observe without thought, you can be said to be heading for the wisdom of Buddhas. So, how is our mind without thought? What is the mind of no thought, no thinking? You probably couldn't answer it with more thoughts, with more thinking. Our subtle essence is natural. Originally, it is not in the domain of realization, so how can it get lost? It is not in the domain of something that you get or something that you get rid of. So how could you lose it? Now, when we say it is lost, that just means one does not understand there is originally not a single thing in one's own mind. And one has not realized the original emptiness of body, mind, and the world. Being obstructed by them, it is said to be lost. Operating only with the fluctuating mind, thinking subjectively, taking that for truth, people therefore take all sorts of illusions associated with objects of the six senses to be realities, when in fact they are just like tea. What is the reality of tea? Do not take yourself so seriously. The two main roads of the ordinary mortal and the sage are simply the two routes of confusion and awakening within one's own mind. All good and bad causes and effects are totally ungraspable outside this mind. Now, when you aspire to go against the current and attain transcendence, to attain awakening, it is totally essential to shed your previous knowledge and understanding completely. No knowledge or technique is applicable. It is just a matter of seeing right through your own present body, mind, and world. All are illusory reflections of ephemeral light manifested in your own mind, like images in a mirror, like the moon reflected in water. Look upon all sounds as like wind passing through the trees. Look upon all objects as like clouds floating through the sky. All of them illusory, unreal things. Not only are externals like this, your own mind's subjective notions and emotional thinking, the seeds of the roots of all attachments, forces of habit, and psychological afflictions, are empty, ephemeral, illusory, and unreal. Looking deeply in this way, whenever a thought arises, be sure to check where it's going. Don't let it go too easily, and don't be deceived or deluded by it. When you work in this way, you are approaching true attentiveness. Other than this, if you spread out mysteries and marvels, knowledge and views, techniques and methods to linger over, you are completely out of touch. So we can all take a moment to adjust our posture, to find our meditation position. Taking a few deep breaths, we can begin to bring the mind home to the body. And as we invite, as we hear the sound of the bell, we are encouraged to let go, to be aware. Just breathing and being aware. So thank you everyone for joining in this gathering of the Sangha. We had the real joy to listen to the teachings of um, Cold Mountain Hanshan, this ancient Chinese Zen Chan teacher and poet. And hopefully we were also able to bring this quality of mind, this spirit of meditation into our listening. And I encourage you to bring this mindset, to bring this practice into your life moving forward. Okay? Thank you everyone for joining, especially to the people who joined through the Discord. Great to have you all here. Great to see everyone here. And take a good care. I think to officially finish, before we end the live stream, I will do a chanting of the Heart Sutra. Um, so if you want to hear me chant the Heart Sutra, you can stick around for a moment. Heart Sutra is kind of the boilerplate um, chant that Zen tradition temples will do. And this is in the tradition of Cold Mountain, so I think it's practical to share this as we end. Maha Prajna Paramita Heart Sutra. When the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara was coursing in the deeper Prajna Paramita, he realized that all the five skandhas are empty, thereby transcending all sufferings. O Shariputra, form is not other than emptiness, and emptiness not other than form. Form is precisely emptiness, and emptiness precisely form. So also are sensation, perception, volition, and consciousness. O Shariputra, this form of the emptiness of all dharmas is non-arising, non-perishing, non-impure, non-pure, non-increasing, and non-decreasing. Therefore, in emptiness there is no form, and no sensation, perception, volition, or consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind. No sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or thought. There is no realm of the eye, all the way up to no realm of consciousness. There is no ignorance, and also no ending of ignorance, through to no aging and death, and no ending of aging and death. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. There is no wisdom, and also no attainment. With nothing to attain, bodhisattvas relying on prajna, paramita, have no obstructions in their minds. Having no obstructions, there is no fear. And departing far from confusion and delusion, they reach ultimate nirvana. All Buddhas of the past, present, and future, relying on prajna, paramita, attain supreme Buddhahood. Therefore, the prajna, paramita is the great mantra of power, the great mantra of wisdom, the supreme mantra and the unequaled mantra which is able to transcend all sufferings. It is real and not false. Therefore he uttered the mantra of prajna paramita by saying, Gate, gate, para, gate. Para samgate bodhisvaha. Okay, thank you for joining, everyone. Be happy, be peaceful. Good luck on your journey.